Hello and welcome to the show. This is the Sales for the Nigerian Business Person podcast. It's available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple iTunes, or any podcast player of your choice. So remember to subscribe for free once you're done listening to the episode and give me a 5-star review. So before we begin, apologies because, it's evening time at the time of this recording, and so the call to prayer is going out over a megaphone, just in case you hear anything bleeding in through today's recording. So, today on the show, we're going to wrap up the discussion that we started yesterday on whether posting content is the solution to all your sales problems. If this is your first time of listening to the show, after you're done listening to this episode, listen to the prior one and then you're going to get caught up to speed. Now, I cooked up a scenario and just letting you guys know that if this is your first time listening and you don't know how we roll over here on the podcast, sometimes I use live case studies. I mean, folks that I've actually done business with. But then sometimes I'm just freestyling and I'm coming up with scenarios just to help you guys see how things apply. So in this case, I made up a scenario where we have a catfish trader who has come up with daily content ideas concerning how you take care of fish, the kind of fish pens that you need, different kinds of fish soup recipes, fish care tips, tricks, and techniques. That's for those of you who want to consider starting your own catfish trading operation. Videos on the kind of fish species that you have available for rearing, the right kind of species to use for soup, the right kind of fish species to use for medicine, or possible benefits of other benefits of using catfish. And I just made up a few, using catfish to boost your sex drive or maybe your immunity. So yes, these are things I've heard in the past. Actually, catfish being an aphrodisiac, and then the immunity thing. So I didn't make. It's not all entirely made up, but what that actually works. Don't quote me. Talk to your dietitian. Talk to your doctor. Do your own research. Okay. Then part of the scenario was also that someone sent in a DM saying, "Do you have Benue catfish?" And then the person responds, "Yes." And then, oh sorry, no, let me start from the top. So, a potential customer sends in a direct message on Instagram saying, "Do you have Benue agric catfish?" And then the trader says, "Yes." And then the person goes silent for 3 days. Then the trader now tries to send one of those messages, "Good afternoon, ma. Good afternoon, sir. We didn't hear from you again." That's one way people do it. Another way people do it is to send out another message to try and engage them, saying, "Good afternoon, sir. We have a market discount available now, 20% off on all Benue and Nasarawa varieties of fish, provided you pay before January 15th, 2024. That kind of message. You're hoping to re-engage them. So sometimes those conversations, those things work. The "Good afternoon, sir. We didn't hear from you again. Good afternoon, ma. We didn't hear from you again." Or some people just write, "Good AM" or "Good PM." Anyway, I wouldn't recommend that, but there are folks that do that. And so sometimes that's enough to get the conversation going. And then the potential buyer asks again, "How much?" And then the person now responds, 15,000 naira for 5 kilograms. And then the person goes silent again. The person goes to you. And then the trader now goes through the same strategy that they have, which is, "Hello, sir. Hello, ma. Good AM, good PM. Market discount available if you buy before so and so, blah 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 blah." All these things that they do to try and re-engage potential buyers in the conversation again. Now, it's possible that this is the point where the person who sent the DM says, "Oh, thank you very much, let me think about it." And then the trader ends up feeling frustrated, thinking that Instagram doesn't work and that posting content is a strategy that doesn't work. Now, I pointed out in the previous episode that the problem sometimes is not with your content strategy or your posting cadence, but that actually you don't have conversion skills locked down. You don't have conversion strategies in place. And I defined conversion yesterday as anything that you do to try and move the relationship forward, anything that you try and do to get people to tip their hand to show that they are interested. And I pointed out in yesterday's episode that that is actually what we should be paying attention to. So if you have a content strategy, but you don't have conversion skills, then chances are things are not going to work that smoothly. So the magic formula is actually to make sure that we have both. So it's nice to have all that interesting content about how catfish can be an aphrodisiac and the best way to enter into the business and talk about different species of catfish and all that. But we also need to have conversion process to make things really click. So now, how do conversion skills apply in this scenario? So first off, okay, all right, okay. So how do conversion skills apply? First off, how will I put this? Okay, let me just say it as it comes to mind. Now, you're going to find lots of different definitions for conversion depending on the podcast or the website or the blog or whatever that you check or the YouTube video. But one thing I want you guys to have in mind is that conversion actually is a skill of carrying out conversations. So whenever you hear conversion, think conversations. Now, some folks are going to say, technically speaking, that's not correct because email conversion sequences are not a conversation at all. But I want you guys to have that mindset that whenever we're thinking conversion, we are trying to engage people in conversations. So whether it's an Instagram DM, the philosophy is you're trying to engage someone in a conversation. If it's through email, that's also the philosophy. You're trying to engage someone in a conversation. And if the person walks into your store, it actually is the same philosophy. You are trying to engage someone in a conversation. Whether it turns out to be an actual conversation or not, this is what we are trying to do. The whole point of the conversation is to help you determine a couple of things. You engage people in conversation because you're trying to figure out if they're interested, the level of interest, maybe they're just curious, and if they have a problem worth solving. This is important because if someone is just curious and they don't really have a need, because it's possible that somebody saw your Instagram content and the reason why they said, let me think about it, or why they were ghosting you is because they were really just curious. Maybe their mom has mentioned something about starting a catfish farm, and so they're just asking questions because they want to know, is this a viable business to be involved in? And is it something that we should encourage our mother or our father who has just recently retired, to get into that kind of business? Now, it's good to also have conversations with these sorts of folks because you might not be able to sell them catfish today, but you might be able to receive a fee as a consultant to them in trying to set up the catfish farm for their mom or for their dad or for whoever, uncle, auntie, grandma in the village. You get the point. So when you find these folks that are curious, they don't want to buy today, but for whatever reason they're curious, we need to find a way of keeping them in our ecosystem. Now that's where lead nurturing comes into effect, or relationship building activities. Now, you can't do lead nurturing or you can't do any form of relationship building unless you engage them in some sort of conversations in the first place. Now, most people are not going to venture that, oh, no, don't worry. The reason why I asked about the cost of the fish and this and this and that is because Momsy is retiring in September and we're thinking, me and my siblings were thinking of what we should do for Momsy, and so this is what we have in mind. The person is not going to volunteer this kind of information. You are going to have to tease out these things skillfully in the conversations that you have with them via the DM, over the phone call, or if they happen to walk into your shop. That's for those of you who have physical locations. Now, for people who are not interested, my own opinion, let them go because you can't do anything much with them really at this stage. However, some people are really desperate and want to hang on to all manner of leads as possible, as many manner of leads as possible. But in my own opinion, let them go. Spend your time looking for more people who might be interested, and just let these people go, people who are not interested. We should always have a healthy pipeline of people that we're talking to. If we have loads of people that we're talking to, then we're not going to be worried about 2, 3, 4 people who are clearly not interested, but we just want to have their contact details because we have no one else better to talk to. Now, for people who are interested, you take the conversation to the next stage. Now, the next stage depends on where you are now. So, whenever I say take things to the next level, take things to the next stage, um, next stage is relative to where you are right now. Okay, so now all this theory, how does this apply? This theory that we've spoken about so far and talking about conversation skills and all that, how does this apply in a very practical sense? Now, let me give you one example that those of us in the event space, used to would face back in the day. Well, I'm sure people who are still in the event space, they still face that challenge, but I don't face that anymore because I'm no longer in the event game. So, someone hits you up in your DMs. Are you available on XYZ date? Some people will say, yes, I'm available for December 15th. And then they get angry when the potential customer ghosts them. Well, it was easy for the person to ghost you because you just gave an answer that didn't prompt any kind of conversation. And so there was no reason for the person to stay engaged in the chat. So, someone hits you up. Are you available for XYZ date? Remember, the goal is to engage them in a conversation. That's the philosophy. We're trying to be conversational. So, engage them in qualification conversations, or what we also call over here on this podcast, people-based conversations. So, are you available on XYZ date? You can say, yeah, sure, I'm available December 15th. Are you the one planning the event? That's a question. The person has to respond to something. If the person says, oh no, I'm the sister of the bride, just asking, we already have a hint that this might not be a serious prospect, because in my own opinion, back when I was a wedding photographer anyway, if it wasn't the bride who called me, I wouldn't place too much stock in that, because there are times when the sister of the bride can call because the bride is based abroad and stuff like that, and then okay, you know that this is worth putting time into. But the thing is, you're not going to know about the bride being based abroad, and that's the reason why the younger sister is in charge of everything, unless you engage them in a conversation. If they say, are you available on December 15th? And you say, oh yes, I'm available December 15th, then, and they ghost you, you only have yourself to blame. So these are examples of how you're supposed to be engaging. So are you the one planning the event? You wait and you listen. What kind of event do you have in mind? Is this a wedding? Is that your birthday? Blah, blah, blah. Questions like that can tease out a lot. Okay, what kind of event do you have in mind? Is it your birthday? The person has to respond, oh no, it's not my birthday, it is my sister's wedding. One question, you've gotten some information. Other questions you can ask, have you booked the hall yet? Sometimes this kind of question, have you booked the hall yet? That is you trying to figure out how invested they are in the track of trying to solve the problem. So for people who have called you, are you available December 15th? And they've called you in October and they've booked the hall, then okay, now you know that you're dealing with some serious people. But if somebody calls you, are you available December 15th? The person is calling you November 30th and they haven't booked the hall. Chances are this thing is not going to pull through. I mean, if they were serious for a wedding that is going to happen in 2 weeks, they ought to have booked the hall by now. So you can see how all these questions are important and the reason why you ought to engage people in a conversation. And then plus, with the information that they give, you are now able to propose what the next step should be. You can see how you are building the relationship and how you are converting one step at a time. So if they've booked the hall, what kind of hall is it? What do you guys have in mind? Okay, this sounds really interesting. I can't give you a quote right now because I would need some more details. I need to sit down with you and your sister, or you and the groom, so we can go over a couple of options. How does that sound? The person says yes, and then you now try to book the appointment so that they come over to your studio or you go over to their office. Now you see how conversion works. You ask some question, gives you some data, you're able to propose the next step. The person agrees to the next step. That shows that the person is interested and you've taken things a step forward. Through using conversations, you have now converted this lead into a prospect. You are taking things forward one step at a time. That's how it works. If someone hits you up in your DM and you just say yes or no, the conversation is dead on arrival if the person decides to ghost you or say nothing else. So the goal for conversions is to engage people in conversations, That allows you to build a relationship. It allows you to gauge the level of interest, yada, yada, yada. I'm sure you guys get the point. So, back to the fish trader example. Do you have Benue Agric catfish available? Ask qualifying questions, ask people based conversations. So, the response is not yes, and you keep quiet. The response is sure, or yes, or whatever it is you say. But then you follow up with a question. Why Benue catfish in particular? It would be nice to know that, because remember, in our example, catfish could have different benefits: aphrodisiac, hanging out with the boys, good party, what else? Or maybe the person wants to start a business. You need to know. So, sure, I have Benue catfish available, but why Benue catfish in particular? And the person is going to respond. The information that they give you gives opportunities to try and figure out the level of interest. Also gets them to tip their hand to see whether they're interested. Okay, no, I've already said that. But basically, this is where we get opportunities for conversion when we are engaging people in conversations. So you ask more questions. Sure, we have Benue catfish available. Do you need it for a party, or is this for personal use? Engage people in a conversation. You can also ask discovery questions or problem-based questions. Sure, we have it available. Are you buying it for health reasons, or are you throwing a party? You ought to ask these kinds of questions, because, like I said, it's going to give you the data that you need and a proper understanding of the context, so that you know what the next step ought to be, so that you can ask for the next step, and that's an opportunity for conversion. So I hope you guys are beginning to see how conversations give us the opportunity for conversion and moving things along. Now, the goal is to try and align the interests of these people with the problems that our catfish solves, so that we can have a meaningful conversation. The people who are buying for health reasons, you're going to be able to steer the conversation one way. People who are buying for sex drive, you're going to be able to steer the conversation another way. The people who are buying just for a great party, you're going to be able to steer the conversation in another way. So that's what the flow of the conversation is basically. Before we convert this person who has sent us a DM, we need to engage in a conversation. We need to figure out, who are we talking to? Are we talking to the right person who can make a decision? If you're talking to the person who calls in for catfish and the person is the event planner, oh yeah, cool, then we can have that conversation. But if you're calling and the person is just the auntie or the younger sister to the celebrant, and the person is just curious, maybe you're wasting your time chatting to this person, maybe you're not. But you're not going to know until you engage them in a conversation, and then you're going to be able to know what next to do to convert. And by the way, if you're talking to the auntie or the younger sister of the celebrant, some of the eventually a conversion point is going to be how soon you can have a meeting with the person who is throwing the party. If the person is inaccessible, then maybe talking to the event planner, or anyway, you get the whole idea. Ask the questions, you get the data, you'll be able to figure out. You're the professional, so you're going to be able to figure out what the conversion step should be. So we need to be sure we're talking to the right person who can make the decision. We're trying to figure out what their needs are, so that we can make helpful recommendations on the right kind of catfish to buy, or the quantity of catfish to buy. That's why you should ask, why Benue catfish? Because it's possible that somebody is calling you and they want Benue catfish, but from your 5-10 years of experience as a catfish trader, that the soup they're trying to cook, let's say they're trying to cook a fisherman soup or white soup or something, that, actually you don't need Benue catfish for that. They actually need Akwa Ibom catfish. This is the point where you're supposed to speak up and say, madam, I know you guys say you want Benue catfish, but Benue catfish is not going to work for Afang soup, or for this, or for that. You actually should be buying this, that, even if it's more expensive. You owe it up to yourself and to them to give your professional recommendations, because if you sell them Benue catfish for a recipe that needs Akwa Ibom catfish, and the soup turns out to be horrible, they are not going to blame themselves. They are going to blame you. They'll turn around and they'll tell everybody else that this guy, Tabishima, is a useless catfish supplier. He sold me catfish that we used to make this soup, and see how this soup is now tasting. This whole soup has now spoiled. And that Tabishima, God punish him. So that's the reason why you should ask all these questions, so you can make the right recommendations. If you do not make the right recommendations, you collect the money and you give them the wrong catfish, it's going to come round to bite you. So ask those questions. Then, sorry for giving me, my cold is still on. That's why I sound funny. We're also trying to figure out if they have realistic expectations around money. That determines whether we can carry on the conversation. We're trying to figure out if they have realistic expectations around the use of the product. For instance, somebody might be trying to buy 5 large catfish and they have a party of 25 people. Now, I don't know much about fish. For those of you who listen to the podcast, you know that I don't like fish. My wife is the fish person. But my guess is 5 sumo sized catfish might not work for 25 people. Maybe you might need to buy 10 or something, depending on the kind of party that you're trying to throw. But yeah, so you might have to advise them to buy more and then upsell. But that would only happen if you engage them in the conversation and you're able to figure out exactly what it is that they want. And of course, the reason why we should do that is precisely for the same reason when I was talking about the Benue catfish versus Aquarium catfish. Oh, by the way, you fish lovers, I'm just guessing that Benue catfish and Aquarium catfish taste different, or they're not the same. So, yeah. So don't stone me if I didn't get that part correct. So where was I? Yeah. So you have to advise them correctly, because if they say they want 5 catfish and you have asked and you know that it's a party of 25 people, this is the point where you're supposed to say 25 people. Madam, this thing is not going to work. Oh, you want to throw a correct party, Abby? You need to buy at least 10 so that everybody will have a correct chunk, so that everybody will have like 7 inches of catfish, or whatever. However it is you fish people talk about fish when you're throwing your parties. So, you need to advise, because if you don't, the person is going to say at the end of the day that this Tabishima is a very stupid catfish person. He sold us only 5 catfish for this party of 25 people. He claimed that it is large catfish, but look at this thing. Is this a large catfish that we had to cut it up for ice cubes, cut it like ice cubes so that everybody can eat? It's going to come around and bite you. So you need to know so that you can make your recommendation to say, madam, how many people are you expecting for your party? She says 25. You say, okay, mommy, this is how this thing works. You're expecting 25 people, but some people will just hear and branch. So, mommy, let's be realistic. Actually, let's say like 40 people will show up. And mommy, for 40 people, this 5 catfish, it won't work. Oh. You will have to cut it small. Mommy, just buy 10 catfish. Okay, try. Buy 12. 12, last, so that you can reach all your guests. Anyway, you catfish people, you know how you're going to sell your thing. Anyway, so if you're able to have all these conversations, you'll be able to confirm that you're all on the same page, you're talking to the right person, expectations are good to go, they've accepted your advice. Then the next step and the final part of conversion, and that's the one that people want, is to confirm the order. Now, some people find this part frightening, and so they say nothing, and the buyer ghosts after all this conversation. And of course, the reason why the buyer will ghost, or they won't bring it up, is because they also are afraid of this stage. So we have to be the professional, and we have to take the step and suggest it, propose it, put it on the table. There are different ways for doing this. For those of you who've been listening for a very long time to the podcast, I have said how my video guy, Shegun, he says, oh, okay, since we're cool, the next step is we need a deposit to the amount of XYZ to confirm your order. He says that, and then he keeps quiet. If you're scared, you can borrow that formula. The next step is blah, 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 and then keep quiet and then see what they say. And so that's it. That's one way to move things to the final conversion stage, which is account details, for the deposit or for the full payment. Another way that you can broach that is just simply tell them of payment and delivery options and then keep quiet and hear what they say. So, okay, thank you, Momsi. Okay, yeah, we can fulfill everything. We can get it for those dates, and these are the payment options that we have available. We can do cash, we can do transfer, or we can do POS. And then you keep quiet. Oh, sorry, of course you ask, which one do you prefer? And then you keep quiet and you hear what they say. That's another way of broaching the conversation, just telling them about payment options. Okay, yes, delivery options too. So you can say, oh, mommy, do you want to pay now, or do you want to pay when you collect? Or do you want to pay when it is delivered? And then you hear what they say. If they say you want to pay now, then obviously the options are going to be you sending account details. Or if they want to pay when it's delivered, then the options will be okay. Well, first of all, I won't advise the payment on delivery thing. Collect a deposit. So if they say they want to pay on delivery, then you say, oh, okay, man, no problem. But for payment on delivery, we collect 50% upfront, and then the final one has to be done by POS or transfer before the courier leaves your house. Let's see, what else? What else? I'm trying to think of other ways that you can move the payment conversation forward. Okay, you can ask. So, hey, mommy, what day do you need it for? She will say the date. And then you now say, okay, madam, to meet that delivery date, this is already October 17th. To meet that date, we actually need payment in full before XYZ date. And then you keep quiet and hear what it is that Momsy will say. So these are different ways of broaching the money conversation, the final stage of conversion if you are scared of doing so. But know that it is your responsibility. You are the professional. It is you that has to broach it. They are also scared as well. Momsy is planning this party. She thought 5 catfish would be enough. You've been able to convince her that it's going to be 15. In her mind, she thought she was going to spend maybe 15K per kilogram. And from what you guys are saying, it's now looking like it's going to be 25K per kilogram. She's done the rough math in her head and she's thinking, this party of 25 people that I wanted to throw, already see how much money I'm spending on fish alone. So of course she's scared. You have to take the responsibility and broach the conversation. Anyway, summary. Conversion. Getting people who came in through DMs as a lead and getting them to walk out as a paid customer. Conversion requires you to view the situation as a conversation. Engage them in the conversation. If they keep talking, you have a better chance of closing the sale. If they don't, your chances go down, which is the reason why when people ghost, we all get upset because we know that that's potential revenue going away. And if they engage in a conversation, but they're not willing to talk about who they are, what they want it for the quantity and things like that, they're probably not a serious buyer. Back in my wedding photography days, there's this guy who called in, refused to say whether he's calling from the bride side or from the groom side, refused to disclose the wedding date, refused to disclose, as in the guy was just evasive on everything. At the time, I told my guys that, look, let's not get worked up about this whole thing. Yeah, sounds like they have money, they're calling from Ghana and all whatnot, but when folks are evasive like this, nothing to happen. Like there's no business here. And lo and behold, there was no business at the end of the day. So if they're not willing to talk about who they are, what they want, quantity, dates, time, everything, they're probably not a serious buyer anyway. Now, there are some buyers that are really sweet to deal with, and these are called actualized buyers. Now, actualized buyers, they already know what they want, how much it costs, exactly what they want, when they want it, how they want it, blah, blah, blah. Those folks, there's no point in engaging them in the conversation. Collect the money first, seal the deal now, engage in the conversation later. Actualized buyers are the people who hit you up and say something like, good morning, I want 5 pieces of Benue catfish. I want them cut and cleaned into 20 pieces. Is this still 15K per kilogram? And how soon can you have it delivered to my address in Apo Legislative Quarters? Now, that's an actualized buyer. That's a different conversation. There's no need for all the small talk and blah, 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 blah. Just, they've told you what it is. The money that they said is within the ballpark. It's possible that maybe at the time they bought it last was 15 kg per kilogram, but now the cost has gone up to 18 per kilogram. You just point out that fact, haggle, have that conversation. But when actualized buyers hit you up, no need for the conversation. Seal the deal, deliver. After that, you can worry about building relationships, because we're trying not to come up with stuff that might ruin the chances of closing the deal. Let's see, what else? Okay, this is 30 minutes. Let me just bring that to a close. So that's all for today, pretty much. So if you love what you've been hearing on the podcast and you want to come up with a plan for dealing with different kinds of DMs in your business, when people hit you up on LinkedIn, when they hit you up on Instagram or wherever, email, and they hit you up, hey, how much are you available, blah, 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 those sorts of things. Now, if you want to come up with a plan for dealing with all these scenarios, then hit me up on 080 6466 2140. to figure out your use case scenarios and to try and figure out the typical buyer profiles, the people who get in touch with you. And we can now come up with conversation paths to help you convert more of these DMs and emails to paying clients. So when I say hit me up, I mean you can call, you can SMS, you can WhatsApp, you can Telegram. Also connect with me on LinkedIn or any social media of your choice. My name is Tavishima Ayede. You can confirm my name, the spelling of the name, my email address on the website where you're listening to this episode, and also the profile of the podcast app where you're listening to my voice. So thanks for your time and attention. I think I'll bring this conversation to a close now. Let's see if we can get onto some audio questions. Sorry, not audio. Audience questions from tomorrow. So thanks for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next episode.